From sea to shining sea and everywhere in between.
Wherever you are around the country.
This is America's Outdoor Talk program, Outdoors This Week. Outdoors This Week.
Get the kids, get the dog, get the cat. Sit them all down next to the radio. We are going to be talking about the great outdoors today.
And now, with America's latest news and talk on the great outdoors.
This is a dangerous place, man. You've got 1,000-pound bears wanting something that you have.
Here's your host, Alex Langer.
Why, that would be me, Mr. Announcer. How does he do it so perfectly every time, Lena? I don't know. We got to give that guy a raise. Whoever he is, he's awesome. Listen, we have with us today one of the all-time greats of bass fishing. He is known affectionately as a general. He's one of the most respected bass anglers in the history of bass tournament fishing. That's saying a lot. And, of course, it could be only one of several people. And in fact, we have Larry Nixon with us today. He has made 25 appearances in the Bassmaster Classic. He actually won a Classic in 1983, and he was an Angler of the Year in 80 and 82. So in his recent years, he, like many B.A.S.S. tournament anglers, has fished with the FLW. He's finished in the top 25 FLW standings for the majority of his tour years. And he's got a dedicated group of fans that give him a huge cheer wherever he goes. That's one of the reasons he likes to fish tournaments. It's his cheers. It's his loyal fans. So Larry started fishing at tournaments in 1977. That's about when I started. Started in 75.
Wow.
Not at Larry's level, but he finished 19th place in his first tournament and took home $600. That's what I won, roughly, for winning my first tournament, about $500. That's what I got.
That's great.
And he won a fully rigged Ranger bass boat in his first major tournament in 1978. And since then, he has won 10 boats. 10 boats, count them.
Wow.
And his favorite technique is worm fishing, and his favorite body of water is Toledo Bend, where, if I'm not mistaken, he was a guide. So when he's not fishing, Nixon can be found deer hunting. How cool is that?
That's way cool.
He's the total outdoor man.
Everything.
He's the whole package.
Yeah, he is.
He's kind of like you, Lynn. You're the whole package. So that's it. Then we have all of our usual suspects. We got Larry Whiteley, good old what's-his-name, Wade Bourne, and then we also have Sammy Lee, the big Tweety Bird. How can I forget Ron Lindner? Ron the man.
Don't forget Ron.
Ron will have me strung up and drawn and quartered if I forget about him. So that's it. That's it, folks. How can you miss the show today? Stay with us. We'll be right back.
More of America's favorite outdoor talk program, Outdoors This Week, after these messages.
Hi, folks. Ron Lindner here for Linder's Angling Edge Television. We're still on every Saturday on the Pursuit Channel. What had just got completed last weekend was the Forest Wood Cup, the FLW. As it was, a guy named Randall Tharp finally beat his way through. He won the tournament. One of the exciting parts of this was the run done by a young Indianapolis, a 20-year-old angler who won it last year. He came from way behind and he landed in second place. Speaking to Ned Keddy, Ned gets a hold of guys like Tommy Martin, who have been on the trail. He's the oldest functioning pro angler out there, 72 years old. He was on tour when I was still on tour, and Al was still on tour, way back. They don't do as well anymore. And you see guys like Rick Cludd, former champions, Roland Martin, one of the winningest guys ever in the old days, old now. He's in his 70-pluses. And what happened? Physically, these guys still have the ability to get out there. Larry Nixon still can shine once in a while. He gets up there. But winning like these young guys, and nothing perhaps exemplified, we were talking with Ned, was a recent tournament out of the St. Lawrence River won by a kid named Brandon Polanic. And Tommy Martin, well, when Ned asked him, what is it with the older guys? And he says, we know too much. It isn't that the accumulated knowledge doesn't help you sometimes. It tells you what you can't do. What you can't do. This is very important. Polanic at the St. Lawrence River out of Ogdensburg, New York, ran 108 miles one way to get out Lake Ontario and fish for 4 straight days. He was going 216 miles. He needed to win this tournament. He's 25 years old. He did not know that you can't do this. He made the Bassmaster Classic by winning this. Second place would not have done it. And he found some fish. He went there earlier, pre-practice way before the tournament, and they got some fish, and he had them way out at the end of Lake Ontario, outside the river. The older guys, like Kevin Van Dam, said, these guys are not going to run. They know in their heads that for 4 straight days, a lot of times from the ships that are coming in there for the St. Lawrence Seaway, throw 5 and 7 foot waves coming down there, and to run that whole 108 miles up and back, that's 216 miles. It's mind-boggling. And only a 25-year-old kid who don't know that it cannot be done. The weather and the wind and the waves cannot hold you for 4 days. It just won't allow it. He didn't know that, and consequently, he did it. And that kind of answers the question of why the older guys that know too much, they get a little cautious. True experience, they learn that, you only do so much. You probably try those things in your youth, and you break up the boat and probably part of your body doing those things. You learn not to do them anymore. Well, that's the difference between the youth out there and the old guys. But a lot of these guys that are in their early 60s, they can physically handle the rigors of a 3-day or 4-day tournament. They can handle that, and they've got all that experience. But in the heart, that crazy will to win at all costs. All this kid had to do, it was his entire focus of his entire life. Other guys got family, kids, responsibility, other things going on. This is all he could concentrate. He focused his mind, and he pulled off a memorable stunt. Well, that's it for Ron Linder here at the Angling Edge and his outlook on age. I can still get out there, but I'll tell you something else. It ain't as easy as it used to be. See you later, folks.
Getting ready, coming up on Bass Pro Shops Outdoor World.
Have you ever wanted to disappear into the woods? Have you ever wanted to tie your own flies, but never taken the time? Have you ever wanted to speak turkey? Then you belong at Bass Pro Shops. Every week, we offer free skills workshops to help you get started. See the store or go to BassPro.com for more information. Bass Pro Shops. Your adventure starts here.
Starting to get ready for hunting season by getting in shape offers many benefits, including reduced risk of injuries and improved chances of taking game. Hunting injuries related to being out of shape keeps more hunters out of the woods or mountains than any other single thing. Back and joint injuries, even heart attacks occur every hunting season. How in the world can you enjoy the outdoors to the fullest if you're seriously fatigued, out of breath, and have blistered feet? Start getting in shape now. First of all, visit your doctor so he can point out potential trouble spots and help you prepare for them. Start slow and don't overdo it. Just daily walks can help. Use the stairs instead of the elevator. Park as far away from the office door as possible. Run the dog instead of walking the dog. Use lunch hours to walk, run, or hit the gym. Ride a bike, hit the treadmill, go hiking. It all helps get you ready. I'm Larry Whiteley, and this is Bass Pro Shops Outdoor World.
Why, thank you, Larry. We have with us today one of the all-time greats. In fact, when Lynn told me she had this guy, I couldn't believe it because, I followed him since I was much, much younger. He was right up there with Rick Clunn and the guys that were hot back 20, 30 years ago. but we'll let that go. Larry Nixon is affectionately known as the General. He's been in the Bassmaster Classic 25 times, and he won the Bassmaster Classic in 1983, which would be exactly 30 years ago this year. He was Angler of the Year in 1980 and 82. And Larry is one of those guys that just doesn't get old. Larry, how do you do it?
Boy, Alex, I really don't know. I'm just hanging in there and doing all I can. It's been 37 years, since I fished my first tournament, and to go down there at the Forest Wood Cup last week and still get a 5th place finish against all them kids, that's pretty awesome.
We just interviewed a kid who came in second, a guy by the name of Jacob Wheeler. You and Zell Rowland and a lot of other guys just hang in there. You just keep on keeping on.
Well, the main thing I think is, you find fish that you know how to fish for instead of trying to do all these things running all over the place like I used to do 25 years ago. It didn't bother me a bit to jerk the trolling motor up and run 20 miles and fish 10 minutes. And, I try to find fish in an area where I don't have to run all over the place and beat my body up. And that way I can slow down a little bit. It's not the guy, a lot of times, the fastest guy that wins the race. Sometimes it's the guy that takes his time and paces himself.
You kind of invented that, Larry. So how do you fish differently now than you did, say, 20 or 30 years ago?
Well, the big thing I do is I'm a lot more patient, for one thing.
Yep.
And I look for areas that, holds concentrations of fish or schools of fish, and work through a variety of baits to catch my fish instead of, just run around and get one here and one there. And I really try to develop 2 or 3 different things, and I had 2 good deals going down on the river down there, and one was a spot, that I could count on at least for 2 days before the wind messed me all up.
Yep.
And the other one was just a pattern out on the river where I could just get on the ugliest bank there was out there, and I'd fish pretty fast until I read the water right, and I saw a depth change maybe right up against the weeds, and then I'd slow down and pick the area apart, and it produced 2 or 3 really good fish for me.
What did the winner do, and what did you do?
Well, the winner, he had a couple of key things way back in the thick stuff. I'm talking way back in the lily pads. And then the last day he had one little old ugly, I call it real ugly, because if you ever went in there, you wouldn't spend much time in there. I knew it held fish, but it was just a man-made canal with a few boat docks in it. There's not many docks in that river system at all. This is about the only one I know of, really. And he went in there and skipped the frog up under tree limbs, overhangs and stuff, and got back in the shade, and he caught one real big one, I think, doing that, and he caught his limit swimming a jig up and down the rocks and on the bare banks that's in this one little area, and then he went back to his key area that produced all of his big fish throughout the week, and it was just a real shallow pocket that is solid lily pads. And when you got way back in there, there was one area, I think. Now, I never went all the way back in there, so I really don't know what it looked like, but I know he caught 90% of them swimming a jig and some of them on a frog. My areas were, it was a backwater area off the river, and it was a long point that had an old slough that kind of run in through there by it, and it dropped from about 4 to 7 to about 12 foot right in there on that one long point. And of a morning, if things were right, you could pull in there of a morning and wreck them. But we had that one bad front come through there, and it was blowing out of the northeast, and it was washing silt and sand and stuff through there, and it just got worse and worse each day. And I caught a big one the first day and a big one the second day. And I'd catch 3 or 4 little keepers, to go with the big one. Yep. And it just never did really turn on. It never produced a big string like I thought it would before the week was out. In fact, it went plumb away on Saturday and Sunday. I had to really scrap and scramble to try to catch the fish I did out on the river. And boat traffic kind of stained the banks up out there and made them fish real difficult to catch on the weekend. And the last day, I knew the only chance I had with the wind was with a frog in the backwater in the lily pads, and I spent most of my day in one area back there, and I did manage to get one big fish.
It seems like big strings were the key to winning that event. So
there's no doubt. You needed a big string one day to do it, and I never got that. I caught 13-something the first day, 14-something the second day, 8 the third, and 8 the fourth.
Larry, we got to take a quick break. Would you come back for another segment?
Very good.
All right. We'll be right back with the great Larry Nixon himself. He's here today.
We'll be back in a moment with more Outdoors This Week with Alex Langer.
Wow! Woo! Hold on to that, and that's
That's a good one since 1984. Tight Lines with Sammy Lee.
He's known as the best plastic worm fisherman in the world, and the record books will back him up. He's Larry Nixon. Hello, this is Sammy Lee. In just a moment, Larry will continue his discussion on plastic worms, how, when, and where to fish them. But first, this message.
When you're trying to get a trophy in your sights, you need HuntMate Pro, the iPhone app for hunters of all kinds. HuntMate Pro shows you the best hunting times each day, moon phase and sunrise data, plus color weather radar and extended forecasts, including wind speed and barometric pressure. You'll also get hunting tips and recipes at the touch of a finger. Take an iPhone picture of your trophy, and HuntMate Pro puts it on the trophies page and logs the exact spot you made it. Hunters on the go need HuntMate Pro. Buy yours online at the iTunes Store or at huntmateapp.com.
For more than 20 years, Bee Branch, Arkansas angler Larry Nixon has been known as the best plastic worm angler anywhere. And if the record books are any indication, he is. Because during Larry's pro career, he's won a Bassmasters Classic Championship, a B.A.S.S. Angler of the Year title, and over $1 million in tournaments. So yes, I guess you could say he knows a thing or two about plastic worms. But while talking with Larry, I mentioned that the plastic worm has never had the mystique of producing big bass like a jigging pig or a spinnerbait does. Why, Larry?
Well, it's knowing where to put the bait is the whole key to fishing any lure. And once you figure out the type of water the bigger fish are in, then normally you can match it to some style of worm fishing or jig fishing. And, present your lure to that particular type of water and the fish will still bite it. Granted, it don't produce the big fish in the springtime like some of your moving baits does, but still the fish go into situations that they have a tendency to not chase items and bury into cover, and anytime this happens, a worm suits the need.
And as the tournament records show, Larry Nixon knows how and when to catch them on a plastic worm. On my next program, Larry Nixon will talk about the correct size and style of plastic worm to use for the conditions that you're fishing around. So I hope you be sure to join us as I continue my series on plastic worm fishing with the greatest plastic worm fisherman alive, Larry Nixon. I'm Sammy Lee, and until next time, Tight Lines.
Tight Lines, brought to you by HuntMate, the ultimate hunting app for your iPhone. By UFP, America's leading maker of brake systems for boat trailers. And by Cheyenne Ridge Signature Lodge. Discover why our lodge earned 2 Beretta Tridents.
If you like Facebook, you'll love the Sammy Lee page on Facebook. Check out me, Sammy Lee, even more lovable than ever on Facebook.com.
Thanks, Sammy Lee. Now, my first question is for Lynn. Lynn, did you plan to have Larry Nixon on?
I got a hold of Larry the other day, and this was weird. I downloaded Sammy's reports yesterday, and they were all about Larry.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's like fate.
Yeah.
It's like God speaking to us about Larry Nixon.
About Larry.
All right. Larry Nixon is with us today. He is one of the greatest anglers in tournament bass fishing history. He has made 25 appearances on the Bassmaster Classic. He won the Classic in 1983. He was Angler of the Year in 80 and 82. And lately he has been fishing the FLW events. Now, Larry, a lot of B.A.S.S. anglers have started to fish FLW. Why did you start to fish FLW? And is there a reason why everybody that has fished bass seems to be fishing FLW now?
Well, they both have good payouts. That's the main thing. They have big purses, and they have a year-end event that's worth $500,000 to the winner. I fished bass for 29 years, made 25 classics, and when ESPN bought them, they were after the younger guys, and the last classic I went to, I think I caught 20 pounds the first day, 17 the second day, and about 15 the third day, and I finished 10th, and I was a commercial every day, and I said, you know what, I got sponsors aligned with FLW, I'm going to FLW, and heck with this mess, I'm just not, I wasn't their type of profile, to be a screamer and a yeller and a kicker and a thrower and a breaker, and I was more laid back and easy going, and I just didn't they didn't seem to want to give me any publicity even when I did good. So I've been fishing FLW now for 15 years, and I fished their championship 14 years, and that's pretty good.
When you talk about screaming and breaking things, you're obviously referring to Mike Iaconelli.
Oh no, there's a whole lot of them that kick stuff and break rods and reels and doing different.
They're just copying Mike.
He's the premier yeller, and I love him to death. I've spent a lot of time with Mike doing seminars around the country, and he's a great individual. That's just purely really a ploy to get more publicity.
Yeah, Mike has been in the studio here with us a couple of times. And how did you get a gig with Bass University?
I've done 2 or 3 of their schools. You know, when they go do their schools, if I've got an open weekend, they try to get me to do 1 or 2 a year. And I've always done them when Gary White had that thing over there in Oklahoma, you know, when he had the Bass Institute or Bass Fishing schools. And so I've done many of them for the guys.
You're like the visiting professor emeritus. If I were to compare it to Harvard University, you're like the visiting professor, right?
That's exactly right. When they need somebody to teach soft plastics and how to fish a Yamamoto Senko or a plastic worm, it's me.
Could you teach us how to fish plastic worms on the radio?
It's hard to teach. You need to watch videos to really get the right rod technique and how to work it, but it's basically a lift and fall, and you let the worm fall on a slack line, and you hop it up in the air, and you hit brush piles or limbs, and then when it pops over, you let it free fall back to the bottom, and the bass usually take it going down. And it's not that hard. It's very easy. 12, 15-pound test line and a 3/16-ounce sinker and a little 6 or 7 inch plastic worm, and you'll catch fish day in and day out. And you know, the best way for a beginning fisherman to learn how to catch a lot of bass on a worm is to take a spinning rod and get you a little 1/8 or a 1/16-ounce jig head, and you rig just a little bit at the top, and you pull it down to the little spur, and then you hook the hook back inside the worm where it's weedless.
Right.
And you just take that spinning rod and pitch it around everything you see and let it sink to the bottom, and I promise you're going to catch fish.
That's almost like a slider. For people that don't remember sliders, back in the day, a guy by the name of Charlie Brewer invented a little tiny worm called a slider, and by golly, you'd fish them and you'd get hits.
Hey, I still got them in my boat. Not just because I'm back in the day, I still got a lot of back in the day stuff.
What baits do you have that were good back then and that are good now?
Some of the baits that I carry that I never ever let go away, and that's just a regular old 6-inch worm with a little curl tail or a little ribbon tail. A lot of these kids, they don't even have one anymore. You know, they carry Senkos, but they don't carry old style worms.
You're right. What's happened to the twister type tails?
Tournament competition is power bait fishing if you're going to win a lot of big tournaments, and you know, it's and the shaky head, the spinning rod with the jig head and a 6 or 7 inch worm on it has pretty much. I'm not going to say it's totally replaced it, because there still are times when a little curl or a ribbon tail will catch fish when a straight tail worm won't.
Right.
And, you know, that's one of the things I kind of pride myself in. I still carry them baits. And, in fact, a lot of the fish I caught down on the Red River, I was using a bait that has a little twirly tail that I was dyeing chartreuse to make it, you know, look like a little shad swimming in and out of the grass.
You got an advantage on the younger kids because they don't even have this in their box, probably.
I think my biggest advantage over them is I got a lot of patience, and they don't have much patience.
Right. You talked about power baits. What power baits do you throw?
Well, power baits are, you know, like a jig or a crankbait or a spinner bait or a moving type bait, like a frog. That's something that's how we classify them as power baits, is because they're more of a you keep the boat moving, you make continuous casts. You're not really dwelling on one spot very long. You're trying to get a fish to react on a bait that's kind of moving along pretty fast.
I thought power baits were crankbaits and maybe spinner baits, but you're throwing jigs in there.
Oh yeah, jig is definitely a power bait, because when we use a power fishing lure, I should call it, it's a big bait, it's a large profile bait, and you use a fairly heavy one, and you can actually really cover a lot of water with it, because, you know, it gets to the bottom real fast, and if it blows by a fish and it gets him excited, he eats it.
Wow. Larry, we got to take a quick break. Would you come back for a final segment?
Sure enough.
All right, folks, stay tuned. We'll be right back with the great Larry Nixon himself.
Hey, what do you think you're doing? Don't change that dial. Alex will be right back with more of Outdoors This Week after these messages.
In big agricultural fields, deer hunters may have the opportunity to make long shots. do this, they must have a fast, flat shooting rifle. They also have to be aware of bullet drop and wind corrections. Dick Jones shoots competitively in long-range rifle matches. He has some good advice about staying on target at long distances. I'm Wade Bourne, and this is Wired to Hunt Radio. We'll be right back with Dick Jones after these messages.
More Wired to Hunt Radio coming up.
Planning to head outdoors today? The National Shooting Sports Foundation reminds you to check the fire danger levels in your area. Whether target shooting, camping, or even parking a car with a hot exhaust, remember to take precautions. If you're going shooting in dry conditions, minimize the possible risk of fire by not using steel-jacketed or steel core ammunition, tracer rounds, or exploding targets. As we know, wildfires have many possible causes. Don't be one of them.
For a day at the range, it's hard to beat an accurate pistol and lots of .22 long rifle ammunition. Folks at Smith & Wesson couldn't agree more. And the new M&P 22 pistol fits the bill perfectly. The M&P 22 combines the look, feel, and familiar operating features of the trusted M&P series of centerfire pistols. The M&P 22 is perfect for training or simple shooting enjoyment. To learn more about this new M&P rimfire pistol, visit www.smith-wesson.com.
This is Wired to Hunt Radio.
Yesterday, long-range shooting expert Dick Jones had advice for deer hunters who hunt where shots of several hundred yards are possible. Dick told me that the faster, flatter shooting loads are better for long-range shots, and one of his favorites is the new .270 Winchester Short Magnum.
It's a good combination between recoil, because you're shooting a 130 to 150 grain bullet, so you don't have the same recoil that you'd have out at 300 Win Mag, and at the same time that rifle's going to shoot flat. So it's a great caliber. Depending on the size of the game, 260 Remington, anything from. Once you get around that 3,000 foot per second velocity, you're going to have a fairly flat shooting rifle, and it's also going to make it easier to manage the wind. For most people hunting at 300 yards, you very rarely need to make a wind dope, but it's not an unusual thing for me to put on 1.5 minutes of wind at 300 yards to stay in the, to put the group in the center with a competition rifle. So 1.5 minutes is that converts to just 3 inches, really. So on a game animal, as long as you shoot well, that's not going to be a big issue.
That's Dick Jones with some good advice about making long-range shots at deer and other big game. And that's also today's Wired to Hunt Radio. I'm Wade Bourne saying thanks for listening and get outside.
Thanks, Wade. And we have with us today Larry Nixon. Larry is one of the all-time greats of bass fishing. He was one of my heroes way back in the day, and he is known affectionately as the General. He won a Bassmaster Classic, and he's been in 25 Bassmaster Classics, which is a feat all in itself. And he was Angler of the Year in the early 80s for 2 years. Lately, he's been fishing in the FLW. And Larry, Ron Linder and I talk about this quite a bit. What would you say are the biggest new and improved things that have come into bass fishing in the last 30 years?
Well, I think probably one of the biggest difference makers, as far as I can tell, is the GPS. When Lowrance come out with the GPS and the mapping system that goes into them units now, these kids, they can find places that, they never had the patience to go out there with a map and idle around for 2 days looking for a wormhole. And, that was one of my strengths, me and David Fritz and some of the other deep water guys. We'd go out there and just idle and they'd, forever hunting the right kind of break and the right kind of drop-off and find these big schools of offshore fish. Well, now you can take one of them big Lowrance XD10s or XD8s and go out there and, it's all right there in front of your face. You can see every bit of structure that's in the body of water, and boy, you can cover that deep water so much faster. And that's one thing I wish kind of didn't exist anymore because I had fun out there by myself.
Electronics has kind of turned fishing into a video game.
Yes, it has. It's really changed it, and nowadays there's a new lure out there. That Alabama rig has just been phenomenal as far as the number of tournaments it's won in a 2-year period, and it's nothing more than a combination of anywhere from 6 to 9 to 12 swim baits on one frame, and it's pretty amazing what it catches when the water's cold, and it's one of them baits that's heavy and it's hard to throw, and I can't even fish with it. I can make about 30 minutes with it, and that's it. I got to put it up.
If somebody told me back in the day you could fish with 5 or 10 lures at a time, I'd say, you're crazy. They'll never allow that.
Yeah, I didn't. Well, until the states regulate it, actually it's up to the states to say, no, you can't use over a lure that has over 6 hooks or 12 hooks or whatever it may be, and some states do regulate it, but you can get around it by throwing 3 swim baits with hooks and then 9 or 10 dummies, and you leave the ones with the hooks hanging out the farthest. Well, that's the ones that always get eat.
Right. Another former Bassmaster Classic introduced that. I don't know how I feel about it myself. How do you feel about the Alabama rig, Larry?
Oh, I hate the thing, but it's a personal reason because my shoulder's so bad. I hate it. If I was a kid, I might love it. But it's very difficult to fish with because it's something you got to man up and sling for. You don't just pick it up and throw it for 30 minutes and lay it down and expect it to produce fish, because it's a bait that is so realistic and it looks so good that the bigger quality fish that are most difficult to catch, they look up there and say, wow, there's an easy meal, a whole pod of them. Go up there and bite it. It's a big fish bait.
You've never been able to imitate a whole darn school of minnows, but now you can with the Alabama rig.
And that it does. And, buddy, you can buy some of the prettiest little swim baits to put on that thing, and It's so realistic looking that a fish just can't resist it.
Right. The Alabama rig, you hate it, right?
Oh, I can't stand it because it hurts my arm so bad. And like at Beaver Lake this year, I catch, I caught 20-something pounds, which at Beaver in 2 days, that's an automatic top 20.
Yeah.
And, the third day I could have probably caught enough to get up in the 30s. And that's an automatic top 10, and I finished 22nd and don't even get to fish the final 2 days because 18 out of 20 was throwing an A-rig.
Really?
Right.
That's crazy. That's crazy, Larry. That's crazy talk.
Yeah, I had a great tournament and didn't get to keep going.
Larry, how long are you going to keep fishing?
Well, I've got a great support of fans out there. My Facebook page is full, my fan page is full, and I get the biggest cheer at the FLW Cup, and as long as I've got fans like that rooting for me, and I can have a good tournament every now and then, I'm not going to let the slow times get me down. I'm going to go as long as I possibly can because I still love it, and I can fish 6 or 8 tournaments a year without any problem. And, I just love it.
Larry, I appreciate you being on with us. And you've had a carpal tunnel injury. Has that hindered your fishing ability, and do you still suffer from it?
Oh, yes, I don't suffer from it. But when you get that surgery on your hand, what it does is if it gets down below about 48, somewhere in there, and it starts to rain and your hands get damp, I cannot even mash my thumb bar, to make a cast with a bait caster. I have to go strictly spinning tackle after that.
That's a great excuse for not fishing in the rain.
You got it. I wish I could pick my 6 or 8 tournaments a year and say, y'all can have these cold ones. I ain't going. Now that I could go with, but, the way they've got the tour point system set up, you can't do that, really. You have to pretty much fish the whole circuit.
Yeah. Larry Nixon, thank you for being on with us. I'm honored. My audience is honored. Lynn is honored. We're all honored. Good luck on whatever tournament circuit you fish.
Thank you very much, Alex. I enjoyed it. Anytime, man.
Okay, Larry, I appreciate it. And we'll be back next time on Outdoors This Week. Bye-bye.
Alex Langer, Outdoors This Week.